Welcome to the Wade Borth Podcast, where fresh thinking meets financial freedom. Each week, we explore ideas that challenge old habits and light the way to a stronger financial future. Let's get started. Hello, welcome back to the Wade Borth Podcast. Today, I have two brilliant minds with me, two great friends, and two people I trust tremendously in the industry. My friend David Zapata, who's been on the podcast a number of times. Thank you, Dave, for joining us. The one and only Todd Langford. Todd and I, we've known each other, a lot of years. I love Todd. Todd Langford has a software package called Truth Concepts. I remember going to some of the very early Truth Concept trainings, and there was so much that just blew me away. I would encourage, if anybody's in this industry, anybody's thinking about this industry, if you're a client, this is not a company-specific calculation program. It helps us bring the truth to the surface, and I would encourage you to get the free trial of it, start to understand it. It is a tremendous tool in your life for a lot of different things. It doesn't have to be used in life insurance. It just happens to work well in our industry because it brings things that are perceived to be the truth and says, are these truly, are they this truth that we're looking at, or is it something that we've been conditioned to think to not be the truth? So anyhow, I'll throw that in the show notes. We have Truth Concepts. One of our partners, we use it all the time in our sales process. I want to bring the conversation with Todd and about what we're seeing in the industry. You've been in the industry as long as I have, or maybe longer, I'm not even sure. But there's a lot of conversation around how people think and how we use the tools and really what we're seeing in the industry. So I'm excited to have this conversation with Todd because he is one of those, really the two gentlemen on the call today. They're changers in our industry. These are people that are changing our industry and changing for the good, by the way. So welcome, Todd Langford and David Zapata. Thank you so much for joining us, you two.
Thanks for allowing us to be here. This is a subject that's really a lot of fun for me because when we look at it and you think about the numbers, right? I have software. And what about all of the numbers that we go through? The numbers for me are to support the idea of whether or not the philosophy or the concept or the strategy actually works, right?
Yeah.
And, a big part of when we look at people in their decision-making process, they're not making decisions based off of math, right? But every decision we make is emotional. That's why, as humans, we screw things up, right? But if you think about it, if we were looking for the most efficient way to live, a cardboard box under a bridge somewhere is probably the cheapest way to live. Quality of life isn't great. And so, we make decisions, even though we know what the math is there, we make decisions to do other things. But what we have to have is that math to have the basis to help us with that decision-making process, to know, okay, I want this thing. It's going to cost me X over time. Is it worth me giving up? How much money am I going to have to give up to go that route? It happens with car buying. That's a big one, right? Because when we look at automobiles, most people, we're just conditioned. We're always going to have a car payment. Let's just continue that. But people haven't looked back and realized, when I trade cars every 4 years, me and my spouse, that's going to take at least $1.5 million away from me at retirement, right? Once I start that distribution phase, okay, I love a new car. I do. But do I love it as much as $1.5 million of future assets?
But I think this is what I love. I'm so excited about this conversation today because what you're saying is it's not right or wrong. It's not right or wrong. It just is. And just understanding what it is and what the impact on my life is, that's where we start with all decision making. But most people, I think, would go through that conversation going, well, I just need a new car. They don't realize what the long-term impact of that is. Yeah. And then once we bring that light, and then if they still make that decision, at least they're making a decision from an informed position versus a position of unknowingly.
Yeah, and so I think we need to use math to help influence our decision, but ultimately it's still going to be an emotional decision. And that's one of those things. We have to make things easy for ourselves to do because we're getting bombarded with stuff that naturally pulls us in a direction that's not beneficial to us. I asked a question in the last class I did, and it was, how many of you buy stuff from Amazon even though it's cheaper somewhere else just because it's so much easier just to click the button of buy now?
Yep.
Oh, and so that kind of stuff, the subscriptions, the bombardment from Amazon, all this stuff makes it so easy. But it's not even anything we think about. It just gets pulled. And so all that money just really subconsciously gets pulled away from us. We have to be conscious of that, but not at the point that all we're doing is spending time budgeting or clipping coupons. That's not, some people like that, but for the most part, that's not fun either. And so We have to find some area where we can actually shut off some of the noise and enjoy life at the same time.
Yeah.
Boy, a lot of truth to that. I mean, it's where do we want to spend our time, right? If we want to live this life of abundance, we can sit there all day and fret about every dollar, every penny that goes out. But more importantly, what if we could just focus on the right things and capture 60 or 70% of those? Again, time is the most valuable asset we have in our lives. And then how much of that time are we willing to trade for a couple of pennies? If we're going to spend that time, let's find ways to maximize it at the greatest degree.
Yeah.
Well, and that's also an interesting thing that I see in the industry, and that is that a lot of advisors, they're asking clients to make massive steps that really stress out the client somewhat. But what we find is when we have an integrated strategy, when everything's clicking together, it's small changes when we can look at time have huge impact long term. Doing a little bit now, doing a little bit next year, doing a little bit the following year in small steps that are actually comfortable and easy to do, and that stuff actually happens. And it gets hard sometimes for people making too big of a step, I think.
Yeah. David, I'm thinking of you when you were saying that. Do we have a thoughtful process as we walk through things? And I hear that. It's like, first off, to your point, can we make small steps? I said, my coach told me, he says, 3 quick steps. You don't need to run a marathon, just 3 quick steps. And it was easy because that was a piece I could break down that made sense. And then I think of a conversation, David, you and I've had where, hey, do we have a thoughtful process now to make this thing work? Because a lot of times people will do stuff, but they don't know why they're doing it. The math showed me I needed to do this, so I did it. Now what, right? So it's like the dog that catches the car. So if you can put it, those small steps along the lines with, okay, now we have a thoughtful process. And so, David, I don't know kind of what your thoughts are along that lines.
I love to think about this in terms of relationship, my relationship with money and everything. Every relationship has the same, a certain amount of time and a certain amount of proximity that is right. Too close, and you're going to be, exactly what you were describing, too close, spending too much time thinking about it, not living life. And, to your point, Todd, like one of the things that I love and why I want to spend so much time with both of you are mentors and probably some of the major influences in my career, is because beyond the numbers and all the things, just because we can prove something is possible doesn't mean that that's what you should do. And in regards to asking clients to do big things, a lot of people in our industry are entering the bar, seeing the girl they like, and asking for marriage right away.
Yeah.
And I think there's a conversation to be had to understand. And I think, again, the calculators, the narrative, the sales process, all of them are ways to articulate, hey, there's a path to incrementally getting to where you want to go, which is maybe marriage, right? But you follow a process. You don't jump to let's do this radical, crazy thing because it's possible. And just because it's possible is not what you should do. Maybe there's a sequencing of things that allow you to become the person that has the right relationship with money, with other people. So, to your point, I think it's a big trap that I fell for the first few years of my career when I didn't have mentorship.
I really like that analogy because one of the things that you're going to find out from that person at the bar is what do they want in their future? Isn't that going to be something that you're going to look at? And yet what we see with so many advisors, they're not asking that question. They're giving them a boilerplate solution that, okay, this is the optimal solution for somebody your age making your amount of money. But that doesn't fit me because I have different desires or different goals. Now, that helps narrow things down as to, what this would be the ideal, but we still have that emotional decision of, but in life, this is what I want to happen. Can we click those off too? And if we're not, as advisors, working towards that, then why would a client listen to us?
We can lay out the roadmap and say, this is where you need to go. And if, again, it's always about telling them. The boilerplate, like you said, it's a way to help narrow it down. But at the end of the day, people are going to have to change, and they have to change their habits and change what they're doing a little bit in order to make these things happen. And really, then the question is that juice worth the squeeze? Is that pain worth the end results? One of the things I do like about your software and Truth Concept software is we have that calculator called Maximum Potential. And that is really an eye-opener. If anybody is listening and they want to see it or look at it, we actually have some videos on it. But it's an eye-opener. It's like, what can small changes in my life do? Not necessarily tomorrow, because again, tomorrow happens, but what happens 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now? And that compound effect, there's a great book called The Compound Effect. The compounding effect of those small changes over time, multiplied on top of each other, those 3 quick steps, multiplied on top of each other over a long period of time can make some huge impacts in your life. But it's hard sometimes because we can't visualize it, we can't see it. And again, I wasn't here to plug the software, but that is a great calculator. I know you're doing all your trainings. And I used to ignore it. I'm like, who would you ever use that? I didn't see value in it for the first 5 years I knew you. So David's racing.
Every day.
Well, you know what's funny is I actually just learned something from it in this last year. One of the things is when we look at inflation, one of the things I've always said is, let's just talk in today's numbers. We can't do anything about inflation. Your income's going up, your expenses going up. It kind of washes out. We're kind of in the same place. And we're not. And there's a massive difference. As an example, I ran a number on somebody and looked at, if we just kept everything in today's dollars, forget the increases, they've got X amount of dollars, say at age 70 from now, and it'll last 30 years into retirement. Okay, then you put inflation on both the income going up and the expenses going up, and all of a sudden that drops to like 8 years. It's like, whoa, wait, what happened here? And during the accumulation phase, when you're putting money in, you have the benefit of a job that has a cost of living wage that's offsetting inflation. When you get to the distribution phase, there's nothing that's offsetting anymore. It all has to come from increased withdrawals from your assets, and so they fall like a rock as a result. And so if we don't take that into consideration, then we're going to be massively short or not have nearly the lifestyle that we really wanted to during the distribution phase. But it's hard for people to get their head around how much money it takes, and most people are at a place where they say, well, I just could never do that. And what you were saying, small changes when we've got time working for us can have huge impacts to offset that. But we've got to start thinking about that really as soon as we can.
Yeah. And I think some of the biggest challenges we end up having around that is like, we can't imagine, as I read something somewhere where they were talking about, can you imagine this movie star doing this or living this lifestyle? And everybody says, oh yeah, I can imagine that. Now they said, well, can you imagine yourself doing that? And they said, well, I can't imagine that at all. Or I can't imagine my brother doing that. So we can't imagine ourselves in those situations because we can't see that picture of ourselves there, but we can see the picture of somebody else. And so part of what, what we allowed to do or what we're blessed to do is working with our clients is help start painting those pictures using tools, using software, understanding relationships, really getting to know what is it they want to accomplish. And once we have that, then it's like, okay, let's start painting your picture. David, I think of you quite often when we first started talking, you said you wanted to be the director in your own movie. Not a lot of people want to take that position. I shouldn't say that. There's a certain part of the population that never want to be the director in their own movie. They want to abdicate that responsibility to somebody else because they can't imagine what that would look like. But if we have the ability to help them and to say, hey, there's a set of tools. We can't print a perfect picture for people, but we can give them an idea what that might look like. And by making a certain amount of changes that are changing their lifestyle, changing their spending habits, whatever it is, get rid of low value spending, and now save those dollars, how can that increased savings make that impact in their lives? Because most people don't see past 2 or 3 years out in their life. They can't imagine being that director in their own movie. Thank you for listening to the part 1 of the conversation with Todd Langford. As always with Todd, it's exciting conversations, it's insightful, it's in depth. And we're going to encourage you to listen to parts 2 and 3 as we publish them in the next couple of weeks. So again, be on the lookout for part 2 and part 3 of the conversation with Todd Langford.
Thanks for joining me today. Remember, small shifts lead to lasting change. Keep thinking differently, keep moving forward, and we'll see you next time.